Nikki.
Yeah?
Didn't SMU make the playoff over BYU even though BYU beat them head-to-head?
No. No, no, no.
What?
No, 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 don't do that! I thought we were having a nice day!
We are. Sit
Why
down.
does it matter? I thought we were having a nice
We are.
day!
What's up, guys? Have you ever finished watching a game and felt like this?
Oh, we were so close. Is it okay that I feel like I don't want to live anymore?
Yes, Bobby, that's normal.
Part of being a sports fan is suffering. It's what's great about the hobby.
I love the pain. Because the pain is the truth.
But there are degrees to the suffering. Being a true fan isn't called being a diehard for nothing. In this video, we are going to break down the levels to losing, so next time you experience a loss, you can at least compartmentalize. We are nothing if we can't fit our pain into history and share the misery with our fan ancestors. If you've ever read, or maybe just heard of Dante's Inferno, you know that there are levels to this stuff. Dante tells us hell is a pit and you gotta descend into it. Well, sports or losses are the same. You can't say you were in hell after every loss, unless you are a Los Angeles Angels fan. I've constructed 13 levels of hell that we experience after losses. Is unlucky number 13 intentional? Possibly. Number 13 will be the least painful, and number 1 is the most painful. So everyone take some aspirin and grab a handkerchief to dab your tears with as we dive into the levels. Level 13, the Balboa Precept. Everyone knows when their team is the heavy underdog. Not only do they see the imposing matchup running roughshod over other teams, but they also have everyone in media pulling an Adrian.
You can't win!
Losing as an underdog stings so bad because you thought you might actually have been David whipping a stone to defeat the big bad Goliath. The team hung tough, had the favorites on the ropes, was giving them everything they could handle, and in the end they just didn't quite have enough to topple the giant. The talent overcame them, and we as fans are left to concoct what-if scenarios for the rest of eternity. A great nationally recognized example of this in college football was the miraculous heave into the back of the end zone in the Iron Bowl in 2023. For BYU fans, it was the 2015 Las Vegas Bowl. This was two teams with similar resumes. The Cougars had started with 2 miracle Hail Marys to upset Nebraska and Boise State. Then the magic had quickly worn off after a heartbreaking loss to UCLA and an absolute skunking by Michigan. Utah had some great wins, like upsetting Oregon and Cal, but they also had lost to UCLA and some other not very good teams. This was the last year of Bronco Mendenhall's time as the head coach of BYU, and he was attempting to not only knock off a ranked team, but end a streak of Utah wins in the Holy War. The game started off about as bad as it gets, with turnovers and touchdowns going against the Cougs. Somehow the Cougs pulled within a touchdown in the final minutes of the game. They had been stout against the run for the better part of the game, but went out like a wet fart as Utah just bled the clock out. This stings so bad because we had high expectations of possibly pulling the upset, only to have the rug pulled aggressively in the first quarter. And then we got all the way back in as we pulled within a score, only to have it ripped away from us yet again. It hurts so bad. It was an extremely tough day in my house. That year I had written multiple papers in my 9th grade history class arguing for Tanner Mangum winning the Heisman. Isn't young love so tragic? Level 12, red flags a-waving. This loss causes just pure fury and anger in me specifically. I get so pissed when one of my teams, who I know had red flags, completely prove me right and dash all hopes in a very winnable game. I mean, I just get livid. How can the coaches not see what I'm seeing? How are they not prepared to address a glaring hole in our scheme, or roster, or whatever it may be? The most prominent national example of this kind of loss is pretty much anything involving James Franklin. How many big games have been billed by the media for the mythical James Franklin winning the big one, only for him to do exactly what we all expect him to do? Your team is talented, but a big, bright, blinking red flag is waving called "Your coach is James Franklin." In 2021, the great big waving red flag taunting me at every turn was Jaron Hall. I was riding a high I hadn't felt as a BYU fan since Tanner Mangum's 2-game miracle streak. The Cougars had just finished whipping the Pac-12 teams thrown at them and broke the cursed 9-game losing streak against Utah. I was over the moon excited, but there was a devil on my shoulder telling me it was too good to be true. Jaron Hall didn't play against USF. We punched South Florida in the nose by scoring 21 straight in the first quarter, but then we let them back into the game. Jaron Hall then didn't play the next week versus Utah State. We started slow, but we ended up beating them convincingly. What did I have to worry about? I told myself. We had incredible receivers, Puka and Romney. We had the best BYU running back since Jamal Williams and Tyler Algier. We had some talent on defense. We weren't possibly going to get dominated by Boise State at home, were we? Oh, we were. With his starting position in question, Jaron Hall returned too early from his injury and proceeded to stink up the joint against Boise State. The offense was completely stagnant and the physical play of Boise State wore on the defense, breaking them pretty quickly. We had greatness at our fingertips and we blew it. I was unbelievably upset leaving LaVell Edwards Stadium that day. I was now traumatized into looking for a red flag with every BYU team. Level 11, the Terrence Mann phenomenon. This phenomenon is not just a Jazz problem, it is a problem that somehow affects all of the teams I root for in Utah. How come this random player has their best performance against us? Whether it be Ollie Gordon rejuvenating his career against us in 2024, or Alabama going nuclear from three-point land in March Madness, or some random role player in the Clippers dropping 39 and basically neutralizing Donovan Mitchell's performance, the loss where the other team beat you purely because they had one guy better than any of your guys is infuriating. Now, the logical answer would be that up until recently, BYU hasn't been one to go fishing for the big name prospects. But come on, how does this happen so often? It's like seeing John Wick enter your nightclub and knowing he's come to rip your heart out and you can't do anything about it. The national example that comes to my mind first is not even a player, it's a coach. This past year, Coach Cignetti was the John Wick of college football. He was coming for the throat and each team knew their guy just wasn't as good as him. I had a nosebleed seat to watch this phenomenon be inflicted on the Cougars in Las Vegas. We came into the game with high hopes that we could knock off a big brand like Notre Dame, and this was right after we were spanked by Oregon, and this could put us right back on track to finishing the year with another 10-win season. Then, like a bad babysitter right after some premarital, Michael Mayers came and murdered us. We didn't have a single guy that could cover him. DBs, too small. Linebackers, his routes were too clean. Double teams, didn't matter. I cannot tell you how haunting it was every time the PA announcer screamed out, "Michael Mayer," after a huge play. I still wake up in a cold sweat hearing that echo through my dreams. Level 10. Broken mirrors, black cats, walking under the ladder. Whatever you want to assign to mysterious forces causing inexplicable results, this is when we enter territory for true heartbreaking losses. This is when you feel like even the theory of gravity is working against your team. You can't explain it. Every bounce goes the wrong way. A guy tips batted balls to himself. Rain falls from the sky and makes the ball slippery. Who cares what it is? Why did it happen to us? Nationally, this would have to be the helmet catch in the Super Bowl. How the hell does Eli slip out of that sack in the first place? How the hell does he get the ball off deep downfield? How does it hit Tyree and stay pinned against his helmet? There were forces outside of football's control on that play. Oh, the pain of bad luck and Utah combined is almost unbearable. Let's go over one of the most heartbreaking series of events that, although they were unlikely, somehow all happened in the same 60 minutes of play. Number one is, on a field-flipping punt return, two BYU players slip at the exact same time, which leads to the Utah Ute returner getting great field position for his team. Number two, on the same possession, the QB throws a meatball to a tight end, covered by our best player, Kyle Van Noy. The tight end maybe gets away with a push and then somehow corrals the ball with one hand. Give me a break. In the third quarter, in BYU territory, Kyle Van Noy strip sacks the QB and the ball bounces harmlessly out of bounds. We would have no such fumble luck when, unable to hear the snap count, the center snapped it to Riley Nielsen prematurely and then proceeded not only to bounce out of a BYU player's hand, but is kicked perfectly into the hands of a Utah defender, so he doesn't even have to break stride as he runs into the touchdown. Number 5, the cherry on top. The first field goal try to tie the game is no good. The fans rush, and we get a second try, only to have it hit off the uprights. Yeah, Bobby, I don't want to live either. Level 9, the ending of The Departed. If you haven't watched The Departed, pause this video and go watch it. The movie winds down with Matt Damon's character being caught by Leo DiCaprio's character on a rooftop, and Matt Damon is going to shortly be put in prison. Feels like the end of the movie. But it isn't. Taking an elevator down from the roof, the doors open and blam! Leo is double-crossed and killed. The audience is left stunned as the criminals get away. Sports shoot you in the heart and leave you stunned as well. It's a sudden death that you weren't prepared for. You're riding the highest of highs, and then just like that, you crater to rock bottom. This experience is not really one that happens that often in college football. There's a pace and a rhythm to the game where you can almost feel momentum shift a lot slower. The closest thing I can think of is maybe Duke being upset in the final seconds on laterals on a kickoff return by Miami. In the NFL, it would be Josh Allen not getting to touch the ball against the Chiefs because of some overtime rules. The experience that left a deep scar on my heart wasn't even football. It was basketball. It was St. Mary's versus BYU. With just 2 seconds left, my second favorite basketball player, Tyler Haws, buried a mid-range fadeaway to take the lead. There was no way that St. Mary's could advance the ball for an actual shot, right? Little did I know, one of the coldest white boys of all time and future Steph Curry stopper, Matthew Dellavedova, would catch the ball, split our defenders, and nail a dagger 3 to stun the Marriott Center. I remember crumpling into a heap on my couch as I watched every fan in the arena put their hands on their head in utter shock. It mostly killed our bid into the NCAA tournament, and it definitely killed my belief in BYU and happiness could be compatible in the fan experience. Level 8, the action movie Phone Call. Whether it's Liam Neeson and a French human trafficker, or Neil McCauley and the owner of Bear Bonds, or Aurelio calling Vigo to inform him whose car his son stole, as soon as the call is made, you better set your stopwatch because that guy is going to die. You just don't know how long it'll take. The action hero is ultimately a force that is inflicted on the villain after a bad deed. In sports, it operates in a similar fashion. Outside circumstances are hefted on the team by their own doing, and it kills the rest of the season. The freshest example on all of our minds is, yet again, James Franklin's Penn State team. Anointed to be crowned the preseason national champs, Franklin's squad was unable to win the big one as they took a heartbreaking 2-overtime loss to the Oregon Ducks. To the casual fan, it wasn't the end of the world. In the CFP system, you can bounce back from a loss and make it to the tournament. To someone who knows the history, this was the death blow, and the rest of the season would be the funeral. Penn State proceeded to lose to the likes of UCLA and Northwestern in back-to-back weeks. Unfortunately, BYU has had many death blows that would kill their season. The first one is summed up in 3 haunting words.
And Staley's down.
Staley bounced a run to the outside, and just like that, the Doak Walker Award winner on an undefeated team was out for the year. When the heart and soul of your offense is done, you're just a zombie at that point. It should come with no surprise that we lost to Hawaii the next week, and then Louisville in the bowl game. This is not even mentioning the BCS shafting us, saying under no circumstances would we play in a BCS game. Too many heartbreaks is too many heartbreaks. Another infamous loss is the one to UTEP in the 1980s. It could be labeled a fluke if there had not been so many outside factors to weigh on this team. The first ingredient for a morale pipe bomb, the fuse. A string of accusations from the country that sparked doubts of legitimacy as a national champion into the minds of the BYU football program. Then, the gunpowder being ignited and exploding in a loss that ended a 25-game winning streak at the hands of UCLA. But more on that later. To have criticism heaped on you and then only to prove and provide validation to those haters, it was excellent work by the haters as they planted seeds of doubt into a team that would bloom into full flowers of failure as they were reminded day in and day out that they were the team to lose the 25-game win streak. The haters could only laugh as the destruction they created peaked with a loss to lowly UTEP. Good thing the modern fan doesn't read old articles because the guys my age don't bring up that loss very often. We're all about preserving headlines. You can't take away that Cougars National Champs headline. Level 7, the ABS Dream.
This game was absolutely stolen from us. We were excited about being in the Big 12, but tonight I am not. We won this game. Someone else stole it from us. Very disappointed. I will talk to the commissioner. This was not fair to our team. I'm disgusted by the professionalism of the officiating crew tonight.
Fortunately. Is the man retarded?
Seriously, where does Utah find these guys? One of my favorite additions to sports is the ABS challenge system. I loathed having games being decided by an umpire that couldn't see the strike zone. Now we have a fantastic way of putting the game back in the hands of the players. This is not often the case in almost every other sport. Refs can still ruin the game for you. Don't you love no accountability for the people that ruin our year? The most egregious example in my lifetime is when the Rams players blew the receiver's head smooth off and didn't even get a flag thrown. Seriously, I don't know how this play isn't talked about more. Do we have a Tim Donaghy situation on our hands? In the case of the Cougars, you have to point to the 2003 matchup versus USC. Now, I don't want to excuse the loss away completely. We made some crucial mistakes like turnovers and allowing white guys to play DB for us, but we got screwed on quite a few calls. The whole night they were creaming Matt Berry late. One especially bad no call killed our drive and forced us to settle for 3. Then, we had a touchdown in the back of the end zone taken away because the ref was blind, and there was no such thing as replay yet in college football. I don't care what you say, there is no difference between the Indiana catch versus Penn State from this year and the catch that was made here. You absolutely need replay to confirm stuff as close as this. Then, as we tried one last time to mount a comeback, the refs called a fumble that was absolutely caused by contact with the ground. Now we can see where the Tim Donaghy blueprint came from. I know it's a home game, gentlemen, but come on. Does Reggie Bush, Pete Carroll, and Matt Leinart need even more help? Give me a break. We got white DBs out there. Level 6, Evil Belt. Coined by depressed BYU fan on Instagram, the Evil Belt is one of the worst experiences as a sports fan. Almost every other loss on this list has enjoyable moments scattered throughout the game. Not these types of losses. It's like the opponent is the Hulk and your team is Loki, and you just get to eat concrete floor for 60 minutes of gameplay. I personally get nausea just even thinking about these games. The beatdown of TCU in the national championship game against Georgia is the most recent example of the Evil Belt. Getting a championship game record for points scored against you and having Georgia celebrate the entire fourth quarter while still playing is the definition of Evil Belt. Give me a moment. I need to take this Pepto-Bismol before I recall these BYU losses. Let's just skip through these as fast as possible. 2009 versus Florida State was domination from beginning to end. Jake Heaps versus Utah is maybe the most infamous loss in BYU lore. 1990 Holiday Bowl versus Texas A&M wasn't even close for a single second, and then was capitalized by Detmer separating his shoulder. 1990 against Oregon, we got the brakes blown off. Wait, what was in the water in that 1990 season? More on that later. Excuse me while I go find a doggy bag. The Endeavor Complex.
Stop! What do you command?
It's just good business.
No, buddy, that was not just good business. These losses. These are the losses where you question if you want to root for a team anymore. This is a special type of hell, almost reserved for college football exclusively. This may be the only loss in sports that puts fans through all 5 stages of grief in just 60 minutes. First, you deny. There's no way that they can keep this up. They're just getting some lucky breaks. Then, you get pissed. How the hell is Twilla Academy for the Deaf and Blind out scheming us? All of a sudden, dread fills you, and you're bargaining. Okay, it's okay. All we need is a couple first downs. Let's just get a drive going and we'll be alright. The fourth quarter starts to evaporate, and depression overwhelms you. You can't even produce a thought. You just melt into your seat. Finally, as you watch the tiny school celebrate like they just won the Super Bowl, you accept that you have been cursed to be born into this fandom. Historically, the greatest example of upset hell is Michigan losing to Appalachian State. But in my recent memory, this hell was exemplified by an abysmal Michigan team grinding out a win against the national champion Ohio State Buckeyes. It may or may not be because I had a good chunk of money on the Wolverines. Regardless of betting slips, it was one of the funniest viewing experiences I've ever had. I can tell you exactly where I was when I started the stage of grief for the 2024 matchup versus Kansas. I was with my girlfriend, now wife, despite the mental breakdown I had during this game. I had purchased Big 12 championship tickets and plane tickets just a week before the game. Absolutely certain BYU was headed for the Big 12 championship after an incredible win versus Utah. The $500 investment did not pay off as I watched a bad Kansas team upset us in our home stadium. I'm surprised we haven't given an ominous name to the pooch punt we muffed late in the game. It was Shakespearean levels of tragedy. What more needs to be said about UMass? Just peak of an absolutely awful season. 1990's loss versus Hawaii was quite the damper on Ty Detmer winning the Heisman. 1996 loss to Washington was the stages of grief being relived for the entire regular season. Coming into the game after a win against Texas A&M that put us in BCS championship conversations, we thought we could win the Natty. Washington wasn't as good, so it was its own hell in the moment, only to be relived with what could have been as we went on to win the Cotton Bowl. I can't despair the game too much since my father-in-law was on the team. Whoops. 2014 versus Nevada was a special case considering we had led for a lot of the game. It was just pure agony. Level 4, Penguins driving the plane.
My goodness, doll, you're shaking like a leaf. Rico, you've had your fun. Pull up. Gear down. Gently now, you just want to kiss the ground. Just a little peck, a smooch like you're kissing your sister.
Not only is it as disgusting as kissing your sister, it feels like the same level of incompetence. The peak of the mountain is just in sight and the wheels come off. Watching your team suffer this type of defeat is like Tommy Boy attempting to sell brake pads. The toy cars get smashed, lit on fire, the meat wagon shows up, and you get kicked out of the pitch meeting. You even almost sealed it. You just couldn't land the plane. Getting high off hypotheticals ends in the inevitable crash back down to earth as your team ruins your dreams. The nation recognizes this experience as Notre Dame. Whenever they look like they can return to their peaks in the 70s and 80s, they come crashing down in a fireball of disappointment. Whether it is getting assassinated by Nick Saban's Crimson Tide or thumped by Ohio State, it always ends the same. The 2024 BYU season was BYU's best impersonation of Icarus. We flew so close to the sun, dominating early in the season, pulling out incredibly exciting wins against Oklahoma State and Utah, only to come crashing down, peaking in the roller coaster of a game, which was ASU. With our Big 12 championship and playoff lives on the line, we looked like garbage. Then we climbed back into the game and performed one of the worst choke jobs ever. Then came just within 3 feet of winning the game. My Friendsgiving was ruined. How could you eat turkey off of a loss like that? Level 3, the guillotine game. Our horrible past, our consistent need to choke, all of our flaws and mistakes, they're just standing there.
Menacingly!
Your team is hanging tough. You know they have all of the talent, all of the skill, and they have been challenged enough to come through in these big spots. And they seem to be on the cusp of reaching a different level, maybe even a transcendent level, where they change from the bottom-dwelling caterpillar into the BCS CFP butterfly. And it all comes crashing down, with all the old demons showing their familiar faces. It's like your team was pulling itself level by level out of the hells we have discussed so far, and you were watching it happen live, but then they slipped and fell, and you were traumatized the same way you are every year. It's being trapped in one of those the monster follows you / spooky thing that plays tag tropes in a horror movie. You think you've escaped the bad guy, and then they smile, and you know you're about to get jacked up. Or you sleep with the wrong girl and all of a sudden you got a venereal disease demon coming after you. The guillotine is hanging over you, haunting you, and you know it's going to drop at some point. This type of loss should just be renamed the Oklahoma level of hell. How many years in a row did Lincoln Riley create the greatest offense you've ever seen, manned by the greatest quarterback you've ever seen, only to get curb stomped in a playoff game? Every Oklahoma fan probably knew they weren't going to win, but still, how could you not hope for a miracle when you had an offense that potent? The guillotine of a horrible defense just hung over their heads the entire season. This was also an epidemic of the John Beck-led BYU Cougars. John Beck has to be one of the most slept on quarterbacks in BYU history. He had some of the most electric offenses. Unfortunately, with great power came great depression for the fans. 2005 marked a year where we hoped to get the engine going on a sputtering football program. Recovering from the retirement of one of the most legendary coaches of all time, and then being followed up with an inconsistent but ultimately problematic tenure from the successor, there was some hope that stability would return and BYU could win some games. TCU looked to be that engine starter. BYU came roaring out of the gate, scoring 21 unanswered. Beck was dropping bombs, the offense was humming, they would enter the fourth quarter with a 41-29 lead, and Beck would end up setting a Mountain West passing yard record. It was like all of the demons were being exercised right before our eyes. Then they came slithering back in. TCU scored 4 touchdowns on their final 4 drives and sent the game to overtime. No worries though, BYU would score on another bomb from Beck to take the lead in overtime. Perfect time for us to bungle a snap on the extra point. Well, no problem. All we have to do is stop TCU. And then we do! They fumble on the goal line. but the refs screw us and count it as a touchdown. We lose in a game where we put up 50 and blow a 3-score lead. It's a result where you just want to put a fist through the living room wall. It's a game where the TV remote gets thrown through the window. It was the same feeling for a team that Lavelle Edwards would frequently refer to as the best team he ever coached. The 1983 Cougars were littered with NFL talent, Steve Young being the headliner as a future NFL MVP and Super Bowl MVP. Expectations were high, and this team could have won a national championship, possibly changing history forever as BYU would become back-to-back champions. However, the guillotine was looming from losses that we will refer to later. Needless to say, Baylor was the guillotine that dropped in the first game of the season. Steve Young looked invincible for 99% of the game, totaling over 350 yards passing and 100 yards rushing. The Cougars put up 36 points and led the entire game until Baylor scored with a minute to play. Doesn't matter, we said. This is a different team. It even looked that way as BYU drove down to the end zone pretty effortlessly with 2 bombs to the middle of the field. With 3 chances at the end zone and 30 yards to go, the Cougars couldn't convert. I wasn't even alive and I'm pissed we couldn't have flexed being back-to-back national champions. Level 2, Ozymandias. Breaking Bad, man. If you haven't watched it, shame on you. In the show, one of the most lovable characters is Walter White's brother-in-law, Hank Schrader. In one of the greatest episodes in TV history, the show comes to a narrative climax with a Mexican standoff in the desert between neo-Nazis and the United States Drug Enforcement Agency. The Nazis gain the upper hand, and Walter pleads for the life of his brother-in-law, Hank, bargaining with $80 million. In one of the most haunting, gut-punching, tear-jerking scenes in entertainment history, Hank refused to plead for his life and says his goodbye to Walter with the words,
You're the smartest guy I ever met. And you're too stupid to see. He made up his mind 10 minutes ago.
He's then gunned down in cold blood. It was like there was a death in the family when I first watched this scene. I was in disbelief. I was staggering around my living room. I was screaming at my brother, "They can't kill Hank! They just kill Hank!" It doesn't happen often, but this same gut punch comes every so often to your favorite team. In my lifetime, it was most represented by Malcolm Butler intercepting Russell Wilson at the goal line to steal the Super Bowl. Seahawks fans in my life watched Russell Wilson plead for their championship lives with an impossible catch from Jermaine Kearse. Marshawn Lynch then watched with dead eyes, muttering, "Pete Carroll already made up his mind 10 minutes ago," before Butler shot the Seahawks execution style. Fans were staggering around, drunk from the adrenaline draining from their bloodstreams. If you want to hear a modern-day recounting of tragic events, but don't have a Vietnam veteran in your life, find a diehard Seahawks fan and ask them about Malcolm Butler. For BYU fans, there have been 3 instances of Ozymandias. Thank goodness only one came while I was still alive. The first came in 1979. It was the first year of BYU making a national stir in the polls. With an opening day upset over Texas A&M, there were whispers that the Cougars could compete for a national championship. The Cougars took the whispers to heart and absolutely creamed the remaining teams on their schedule. This was it. A win in the Holiday Bowl against Indiana, and the AP voters would be put in a very difficult position. Indiana had been up and down all year, and they were even being criticized as being a weak team admitted into the Holiday Bowl. The game was back and forth, Indiana taking a 4-point lead into halftime. The Cougars fought back, staving off the Hoosiers with a touchdown with 12 minutes to go, going up by 3. And then they added a field goal to go up by 6. Then disaster struck. BYU bombed a punt downfield and it connected with the back of an Indiana player. Live ball! The second bounce miraculously fell into the hands of an Indiana player who then returned the punt for a touchdown. A slap to the face. The lead evaporated just like that. The Cougars drove down the field and had a chance at the game-winning field goal with 11 seconds left, but it was wide left. The miracle season ended with dreams being shattered. I'm really not envious that I missed it. The second we have already referred to, the infamous UCLA game that ended the 25-game winning streak. It was the longest streak in the country, and it was a huge point of emphasis for those defending the Cougars as national champs in 1984. UCLA shouldn't have won. We were at home. We had the better team. We had just opened the season by beating the reigning Cotton Bowl champion Boston College. It was a beating for our hometown heroes as they turned the ball over 5 times. Even with the sloppy play, UCLA didn't score an offensive touchdown until the final minute of the game. It would turn out to be a game winner, unfortunately. Despite the Cougars outgaining UCLA 406 yards to 284 and leading late in the fourth quarter, we still somehow managed to bungle the game. The 1984 team was immortalized by clutch plays, whether it was Kyle Morrell leaping over the Hawaii line or Bosco throwing the game winner against Michigan, then hobbling off the field in triumph. We knew that they could pull off the win here. The faith in our guys was dashed as the defense blew a coverage that led to that UCLA score and taking the lead. The final light of faith was snuffed out as Bosco threw a game-sealing interception. If I was a BYU fan alive for both these losses, I would have talked myself into alcoholism. And finally, the one I had a front row seat for, the 2015 Holy War. This may have been the first time I cried after a football game. The game itself was incredible in so many ways. It was an absolute slugfest from both defenses. The pops of the pads were car crash level as they came out of my TV speakers. There was incredible interceptions from both sides, but the game has to be summed up in a series of plays that took me on an absolute roller coaster of emotions. Third quarter, 2:20 left in the game. Kai Nakua gets a blasphemous, egregious, horrible targeting call that removes him from the game with 2 interceptions. Third quarter, 2:11. Bernard has an insane interception catch. Ball nose, I scream in my living room. Third quarter, Taysom finally delivers on an accurate ball to the tight end Marshall, and he drops it. My stomach falls to the floor as we miss another chance for a scoring drive. Third quarter, 50 seconds left. The Utes muff a punt at the 50. The football gods have given the Cougars another gasp of life. Then we get nothing from the gift. Utah eats almost all the clock in the fourth quarter and kicks a field goal, giving them a 7-point lead. Fourth quarter, 1:52 to go. Taysom almost loses the game on an interception, but thank goodness the DB drops it. At this point, I've chewed my fingernails down to the nub. Fourth quarter, 30 seconds left. Mitch Juergens makes an unbelievable clutch catch just by barely pulling the ball off the turf. Fourth quarter, 20 seconds left. The Red Sea literally parts and Taysom runs in the TD. We are within 1 point, and I'm trying not to throw up as I scream. Then it happens. The offense stays on the field. I will defend this decision to this day. We needed to win that game right there. We were the away team. We had played poorly all night. We had to finish them right then and there. What I won't defend is the atrocious play call. Taysom gets stuffed before the play can even start. I'm left in an exhausted, defeated puddle on my living room floor. I should have known that the football game had been decided 10 minutes ago. Maybe then I wouldn't have begged for my team's life. Level 1. The game. You may be disappointed by the fact that there is no BYU game that I can put in this category. This level is reserved for special, world-ending circumstances. The stars must align and all the forces of evil must conspire against you to suffer a loss that you will literally never recover from. Physically, mentally, emotionally, even culturally, that loss will stain your sports fandom for eternity. You, as a BYU fan, have never had your team undoubtedly on the biggest stage, hitting all the winning plays, executing in the highest order, only for it to all crumble in epic fashion, losing sports immortality while the entire country watches. Count yourself lucky, because I have had that loss. I'm one of the unfortunate souls who picked the Atlanta Falcons as their favorite team when I was just 10 years old. 5 years later, I would watch my team flummox the greatest QB of all time for 3 quarters. 2 incredible offensive scores and running back a pick 6 against the great Tom Brady was one of my favorite sports watching moments of all time. I was on cloud 9. Nothing was going to stop me from celebrating one of the greatest playoff runs in history. It would have included wins against the Legion of Boom and Russell Wilson, a win over Aaron Rodgers, and the championship over Tom Brady. Well, you know the rest of the story. It's probably an understatement to say part of me died that day. Just remember, however bad it gets watching BYU, at least you're not a Falcons fan.